And then I was like, am I going to vote for Trump? I was like, oh my God.
What's happening to
I
me?
was like, what is happening?
All right, hey guys. Today I have on a friend of mine, Emily Stanwyck, who is a birth doula, and she also helps run Tall Hot Politics on Instagram and I'm sure other social media platforms. So, welcome, Emily.
Yay. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Of course. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and
Yeah.
what you do?
Yeah. Great question. I actually got started in fitness about, oh my gosh, 2011. Whoa, almost 13 years ago. Yeah, crazy. So when I graduated college, I was an athlete and then I just jumped into the fitness world because I didn't want a real job. And I loved it. It was awesome. And I was in the CrossFit community and a lot of moms were at the CrossFit gym, a lot of pregnant women and a lot of new moms. And I started basically like shadowing my friend Lindsay Matthews. Her new last name is Lindsay Cantu.
Yes.
Yes, she is in Texas also. So she's here. She lives in Wimberley, but she's Austin, New Braunfels. And yeah, so she's a chiropractor and she started a company called BirthFit, which is prenatal and postpartum fitness training. So I just kind of like leaned in hard to that and I like learned so much from her and started personal training pregnant and postpartum moms and loved it so much. And I loved when the babies came too. It was so fun. And then she was like, you should be a doula. And this was about 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago. And I was like, never heard of that. What is that? And the way that she described it was basically like a birth coach. She kind of related it to fitness because that's like the world I knew.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in the delivery room, you're coaching women through labor. I was like, oh my God, that's a thing. I can go to births, but not go to medical school. Yes, sign me up. And I just took a seminar and jumped right in. And I'm really grateful I had her because I don't think I would have been able to. I would have had absolutely no idea what to do if she hadn't been like a friend of mine and helped me and like mentored me to get clients and things like that. But luckily, working at the gym, all the pregnant women came to the gym, and then I attended a lot of their births, and then just really grew naturally from there. And then I had babies, one in 2018, one in 2020, and I'm pregnant with my third right now. Yay! So I got to really walk the walk when it was my turn, which was definitely like elevated my doula, being a doula, like who I was as a doula, because I really got it after I went through my own labor.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2020 happened. Actually, really 2018 happened and 2019 happened because I lived in LA. And
Oh,
yes. Yeah. So there were a couple bills that passed in 2018 that really just kind of steamrolled the whole homeless drug crisis into a major, major crisis. Like it was bad. It's always been bad ever since I was a kid in LA. Like you don't go to Skid Row. You didn't go to the Venice Boardwalk back in the day in the 90s. And I would start posting on my Instagram videos of all the encampments. And this is well before the pandemic.
mm-hmm.
And well before I was even like outwardly not a Democrat anymore. But I was just like, are we good with this, LA? Like I would just take videos. Are we good with this? And people at the gym would be like, you have no compassion for these people. I was like, no, that's not it. I'm like, no, this is called pity. Like I have lots of compassion for what's happening. No one's doing anything to actually help these people. And so I really started speaking up about the homelessness crisis and then just started like listening to local politics more. It really perked my ears up. I was completely oblivious to politics before then. And then I was like, am I going to vote for Trump? I was like, oh my God.
What's happening to me?
I was like, what is happening?
When did you move to LA?
I was born and raised there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
So
so,
I technically wasn't born there. I've lived there since I was less than 1 year old.
yeah.
But I've lived in LA my entire life. So I'm a local, was a local, which is kind of rare. My husband is too. He was born and raised in LA.
Wow.
And uh we both were on the same page, thank God.
Yeah.
And then
So
and then
what was it like during, because we emerged in 2015 as an organization, and I remember we were sort of working parallel with the warrior moms out in California because they were dealing with Senator Pan and what he was proposing, and it actually became law. So were you involved in any of the activism then?
not at all. Not at
Okay.
all. I was actually very much I I had a lot of women in my classes who did not vaccinate their kids. And
Mm,
I will be honest, I judged them as being idiots.
we'll forgive you.
Yeah. And I have since apologized to Lindsay specifically. And I was like,
Mm,
hey, I'm sorry if you ever felt like that I thought you were stupid because I get it now. And she was like, thanks for saying that, you know. So I wasn't involved in any sort of activism at all. Where I was
okay.
more starting to open my eyes to activism was medical freedom in the birth world.
Okay.
So it was more like what was really interesting was all of my births in California were hospital births. I
Mhm.
did not attend any home births until my birth, till I gave birth. So I just every time I went to a hospital, I was just kind of like, ugh, this like it was just I would just get a I did not like it. I did not
Yeah.
like how the women were treated. I did not like the fear mongering. I did not like the coercion that I saw. I did not like just the like kind of like brushing patients off as you don't know more than us.
Mm,
That's where I really started to like wake up and learn more about what else is available. And then, like I said, I'd have many women who did not vaccinate their kids. And while I did judge them, at the same time, I was kind of like, well, these women are really like, they're not stupid.
mm,
Like I was like, you're an idiot, but I was also like, you're actually a smart person talking to you. And so that just piqued my interest, like, why? I'm really
yeah.
curious why. But I wasn't involved in any sort of activism at all until 2020.
Well, and sort of a side note, like, I don't know you from the vaccine world. I didn't really know you and Lindsay from the women's rights world either. Like, I knew her from BirthFit
Yeah.
because I was a part of a fitness community, Paragon training, and
Oh, cool.
Lori Christine King, who runs that, would constantly like refer women to BirthFit
Yes.
for, postpartum fitness. So it was such a pleasure to meet y'all in person
Yeah.
last year and know that we're aligned in so many different areas. But
Totally.
you touched on 2020, and before we started recording, I'd mentioned that at the Texans for Vaccine Choice rally in 2021, I went with a couple of local doulas who were just completely heartbroken at what happened to their natural birth world
Mhm.
as a result of the response to COVID. So I wanted to allow you to kind of give some firsthand knowledge and experience of why was there such a sharp turn there?
Oh my gosh, it is such a good question. And I honestly don't really know the answer, except that, like, I'm sure you feel the same way. Most people are not going to defy orders
Mm,
because they're conditioned to believe that in order to be a good citizen, you have to do the thing for the greater good. Ugh, hate
yeah.
that. Um, so like I said, I was in California and all of my births were hospital births. And I had had a number of births lined up for 2020, knowing that I was going to give birth at the end of the summer. And, I was kind of like saving up and I was like, cool, got all this lined up. And then bam, COVID pandemic. And I was not allowed in the hospitals. And this was
Mm,
way before the vaccine. And that sucked. But then they started saying, dads can't even be in the hospitals. And I was like, oh my God. Like,
Yeah.
whoa, this is so gnarly.
Mm.
And from the get-go, my husband and I mean, we spent the first 2 weeks, the 15 days, really kind of just like I was pregnant. I was newly pregnant. So I was like, I just don't want to get sick. I just
Yeah.
really don't want to I don't even want a cold right now. I'm like 13 weeks pregnant. I don't even want a cold. But I still had my private clients come to my house instead of going to the gym. And I wasn't hyper freaked out. I was just kind of like, what's going on? And then as soon as it got extended, we were like, oh, we see where this is going
Yeah.
immediately. And so when all this stuff happened in the hospitals, in LA, it made a lot of sense because LA, people think is this sort of mecca of well-being. And then I say that every now and then, and someone's like, no one thinks that anymore. And I'm like,
Not anymore. No.
not anymore. In the past, you go to LA for yoga, for the retreats,
Mm. Cleanses.
for the cleanses and, Muscle Beach, whatever. It's all BS. Everyone there is a total blinders on. We're not going to defy orders. And there are so
Mhm.
many people in LA who do think like me, but they just weren't outspoken because they were scared of losing their job or losing their friends or whatever, which I understand on one hand, but like I had a job and friends
Yeah.
and I was a psycho on Instagram at the beginning of the pandemic and I still had a job and I was just like, I don't care. But seeing what was happening in birth was really, really gnarly. Women's rights being taken left and right, having them be threatened to have their baby taken away from them if they tested positive for COVID.
Yeah.
That was so scary because there was no protocol. There was no like for how long, like no, it was as if, I mean, human lives did not matter, but they're
Mhm.
trying to save human lives.
Yeah.
It was
And they
such a
were making it up as they were going along, it seemed.
completely
Yeah.
making it up. And then with the whole vaccine thing, so we had 2020, total shit show. And I was so grateful. I had planned, this was my second baby. I had a home birth with my first. I was planning a home birth with my second. So my pregnancy experience was relatively chill. My midwives were
Mhm.
pretty cool. Like I just said, I don't wear masks. I'm not doing that. Um, I can't breathe. I have really bad congestion in pregnancy. That's like my thing. And I was like, I'm not wearing this. I can't breathe. And everyone was just like, okay, like who's going to say no to a pregnant lady?
Yeah.
I'm also very tall, so I can just look down on them and say, no, no,
Intimidating.
I'm not doing that. But those of us who were kind of like aware of what was going on knew that this was just going to be a vaccine crazy situation. And by the time the vaccine rolled out, we had moved to Texas. So
Mhm.
we were and coming here felt like heaven. It was so much more free and so much more open. And there was, I mean, at least where we live, which was not in Austin, it was like COVID didn't even exist.
Yeah.
It was incredible. Um, but with the births, it was definitely a thing where all the midwives and all the doulas were getting their shots or at least portraying themselves like they were.
Mhm.
I've talked to one midwife recently who was like, yeah, no one knows. Like, I'm one of the only midwives in Austin who didn't get the shot. And I'm like, whoa. Like, they didn't tell anybody. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell you why, except that they didn't want to lose their license. They didn't want to lose business. They didn't want to ruffle any feathers. They didn't want to have the conversation with their patients or their clients. And and then some of them genuinely believed that that was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It was really weird.
So I have 3 kids, and all 3 of the births involved midwives. For the 3rd birth, my midwife had to shift and become my doula because we had to go to the hospital in 34 and a half weeks. But
Oh, wow.
at no point, so my youngest was born in 2013, but at no point did we even I didn't ask them their vaccine status. They never asked me about my vaccine status. I think maybe with my second birth, they might have mentioned like the vaccines given at birth,
Yes.
but it just wasn't really a
Never.
consequential topic or an issue. And it definitely, I never even thought to ask their vaccine status. And this was before I was kind of peaked on vaccine choice. It just wasn't something you discussed. Like you weren't entitled to that information about somebody.
Yeah, like the only thing I would remember being, a young adult is like, get your flu shot,
Mhm.
but like no one asked. I don't
Right.
even remember any situation where I would have been asked. It's just so strange that this is all of a sudden like need to know information will not work with you if you haven't gotten this, and you're a terrible person if you don't get it.
Right.
Now, obviously, it's a lot better because people are realizing like, oh, it didn't work. um, but yeah, because I was so outspoken on Instagram about it, that actually got me a ton of clients.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you just are true to yourself, true to your heart, like, yeah, you might lose business, but you're going to gain business as well.
Mhm.
I think people were just afraid of that. I remember my dad saying to me, like, you better be careful what you say online. And I was like, I am. I'm very aware of what I'm saying online. Like, you're going to lose business. I'm like, good. I don't want those people.
Yeah.
Do not want to work with people who are going to be weird like that. But most people, and especially women, sadly, like um, don't have that like intensity when it comes to personal values when it comes to their business.
Mhm.
They're afraid of losing their license. They're afraid of losing business. Totally understandable. What I did notice when I got here, I had one hospital birth. It was actually, I want to say it was January of 2022. Um, was in hospital in Austin. The doulas needed a certification to show.
Mhm.
So doula certifications are BS, just so everyone knows. um, they're not legal. They're not
Yeah.
they're not like overseen by any governing body. I created my own, you'll probably like this. I created my own doula training course because of all the gender language that was being
Mm.
changed in most like well-known doula trainings. They were, using birthing person and all that crap. So I was like, where do I refer people to? I was like, nowhere. I'm going to make up my own. That is like
Wow.
woman centered. And so I had to have a certification. And so I just photoshopped one and showed it to them on my phone. Like, just so silly because I'm just like, here's my certification. They're like, thanks. And at the time, the client who I was attending had COVID like 9 days prior.
Oh, wow.
Called me sobbing. She's like, I don't want you to come to my birth if I'm sick. I'm like, I've been trying to get COVID this whole time. I was like, I don't care. I will be there. I'm not worried about it. I was like, I haven't gotten it yet. Like, let's just get this over with. And yeah, I'll be there. And then so she was right around 39 weeks when she got COVID. She was not scared of being sick, but just the hospital situation.
Mhm.
And then she gets to the hospital and they're like, we need to test you for COVID because they were still doing that in 2022. And we were just like, oh, God. We know that it's going to show up positive on a PCR test. So, of course, shows up positive. And they say, you need to wear a mask when you are in labor. And I was just like, oh, hell. And she was just like, no, I don't want to do that. Can I wear the face screen thing? What were those things called?
The shield?
Face shield?
Ugh, yeah.
Like a literal like visor on her forehead with the thing
Where
hanging.
it can come up and under.
They're like, yeah, you can wear that. And I'm like, what on earth? So she did that. And they were, they like made her do all this stuff, but they were pretty cool. Like in labor, she just threw it off and no one like forced it back on her. But the OBGYN, I am not kidding you. I have a picture of it. I should probably find it. full on scrubs covering her feet, her hands, all the way to her face like this, like the scrubs that come, like the hoodie that you cinch around your face with
Mhm.
a gas mask, goggles, and a paper mask over the gas mask. I am
It's
not
science.
kidding when I did not hear a single word she said. We couldn't it was like Beaker, it was like the Charlie Brown teacher.
Womp, womp, womp.
I was like, "Is this real?" Like, and we'd be like, "What? What? What?" And then the nurses would, like, translate for her. We're like, "Well, how can you understand what she's saying?" And it was just she was very kind. She wasn't, like, being mean or anything. She was just like, "I'm wearing this because I have young children at home who aren't eligible for the vaccine, so, like, I can't risk." I was like, "Why are you here? Like,
Yeah.
why are you even in the hospital? If you're so afraid of your children who are unvaccinated getting COVID, how can you even come to work?" That confuses me.
Yeah.
It's just like the dissonance, right? Like, they just
Mhm.
can't, like, it was so insane. Meanwhile, she's positive for COVID, and me and her husband are not wearing masks, and she's not wearing a mask, and we're just like, "We don't care."
Yeah.
It was bizarre, and the birth was good, and the OB was, like I said, she was very kind, she wasn't aggressive or anything. She was just hyper freaked out, and, she was nervous about them taking the baby away, but they weren't doing that anymore. I think they definitely I can't really remember if they made a stink about that, but they didn't take the baby away. But it just caused so much more fear than there
Mhm.
already is in the Western birth world. Like, and it just was such a regression in what doulas and midwives had been trying to do when it came to, like, collaboration with hospitals, and then, of course, there were midwives who were hyper freaked out.
Mhm.
Um, and it was just very apparent that, like, women were not in charge anymore, and women felt very much like, "I don't have very many options." And that's another reason why I was so outspoken too, because I would speak up and then midwives would text me and be like, "Hey, send me people who are this or that, who are don't
Right.
want the shot or don't like." I had some people message me, "Who in LA, do you know any midwives in LA who haven't gotten the shot?" And I'm like, "I know two, and I will send you their information." I still only
Mhm.
know two. And yeah, it was insane. It was insane. But Texas home birth community was definitely a little more mellow for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, what you're bringing up, it's sort of like this overlap. I mean, people seek out home births or midwife and doula attended births because of the lack of respect for informed consent in the labor and delivery wards across the Western world, like you
Mhm.
mentioned. So it's like this completely amplified that culture of just telling a woman like this is how you're going to birth,
Exactly.
and you don't get a say in it. Like I remember when I was pregnant, the 3 times it was like, write a birth plan. And everybody was talking about how important it is to write a birth plan. I was like,
Yes.
it's not a contract. They don't they don't read it and they're like, okay, everything that we tell everybody else, we're gonna throw out the window just for you. Like
Right.
you have to surround yourself with people who in your most vulnerable moment will respect what you believe in or what you desire
Oh, yeah.
during your birth. And most likely your OBGYN's not going to cut it.
No, not even a little bit. And it gave OBGYNs so much more authority
Mm,
in inducing in C-sections, in just totally completely ignoring your birth plans or birth desires because of this pandemic. They had the most perfect excuse. And then, yeah, then, like, some women, many women can't afford out of hospital care, right? Because it
mhm,
is a chunk of change. Many women don't know that they're going to be paying a big bill after the fact from the hospital. Uh,
mhm,
but they were then forced into getting this shot in
right.
pregnancy.
Yeah.
Well, if you want, you can't come if you don't have the COVID shot, but they have no other option, right? They can't afford a midwife. Maybe they can't even afford a doula. And you can't come here if you don't have the COVID shot. And I would have, I would have just been like, okay, I'll just do this at home. But
Yeah.
most women aren't like that. Um, it was so bad, and so many women were so afraid to get the shot in pregnancy, rightfully so, um, and it created a total dictatorship when it came to standard OBGYN care.
Yeah.
With my midwives, it was awesome. I remember coming to Texas and talking to a friend and being like, she was like, "Oh, my mom tested positive for COVID, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if I'm going to test myself." I was like, "Oh, I've never taken a test." She's like, "What about at the hospital when you had your baby?" I was like, "Oh, I didn't do hospitals." They were like, "Oh, you got to like
Whoa.
skip all of the COVID BS?" I was like, "Yeah, it was amazing." Now, my midwives wore masks at my house, which I just was like, so stupid, but whatever. And they're like, "We're only doing this out of respect for our other clients who would prefer we wear a mask." I'm just like, okay,
Yeah.
if you know it's stupid, you can take it off. I won't tell them, I promise.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it just took so much power away from women when we already don't get a lot in the hospital system. And the silver lining is lots of out of hospital births are happening now, a lot
Hmm.
more, which is great, especially now that all the hysteria has calmed down. It is still kind of hard to find a midwife who is truly out of the system mentally. You know,
Hmm.
you have to really like know them and know where they stand. And, unfortunately, as much as I hate the vaccine question, did you get the shot? Now it's kind of like, but did you not get the shot? Okay,
Yeah.
you got, so like it's such a wild time now. I just wish everyone was outspoken.
Yeah. Well, and that sort of segues into my next question is when did you decide to create Tall Hot Politics,
Yeah.
and what sort of your goal with that
Yeah.
profile?
Oh, yeah, great question. Um, so Leah, maybe you know who she is. She's maybe not. She's friends with me and Lindsay, and she's in Houston.
Her last
And
name starts with a B?
Leah Bartow, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she my son is going insane right now. I don't know if
Okay.
you can hear the screaming. I'm sorry if you can.
That's okay.
Um,
It's normal.
yeah. She right around the time when I was just like, am I gonna vote for Trump? She was talking to me a lot because I knew she was a conservative Republican and totally loved Trump. And I was just kind of waking up to the LA politics
Mm.
and and then the California politics. I had never, ever, ever followed local politics, like ever, which is insane for me to think about now. Um,
Mhm.
but I was just blissfully ignorant. I just went to the beach, went to work, went to the bar. That was my life. And when the homelessness and the drug stuff really kicked in, so basically the bills allowed for trespassing, essentially, but camping on the streets anywhere you wanted. Um, you Possession of heroin, cocaine, and meth were no longer a felony. And then theft up to $950 a day was a ticketed offense.
Mhm.
You just get a ticket. Who's gotten a ticket for all? I mean, we see it all in mass now. The smash and grabs. So I was like, Michael, why are we even paying for our groceries? Like, why
Yeah.
don't we just steal them? Like, I don't get it for real. Like, I kind of want to.
Yeah.
Like,
Be a lot easier.
it'd be a lot easier on us. Um, and Leah was like, hey, you gotta share about this more. This is awesome. Because she's like, all those LA liberals, they don't know anything. um, so we started this Instagram account together when I was really like, yeah, I think I'm gonna vote for Trump. This is insane. It was insane for me to even consider that. Because I was so not there in 2016.
Mhm.
And I had every intention of making this account public and really using this to um kind of come out as a conservative. I was nervous to make it a public account, but I was like, I feel good about that. Like, I want people to know and whatever, but I was still really nervous. I was like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And then I made it public for like a day, and I had posted a picture of me wearing a MAGA hat, and like someone sent it to someone at my gym. And
Ugh.
I got the nastiest long text message from them. And someone stopped going to the gym because of that. And then I got a text message, and I was just like, you know what? I actually want this to be private, and I want this to be a place where I can speak very, very freely, where people who follow me, I know who's following. So the intention of this was kind of just a release of all my anger and all my rage, but that I wasn't really willing yet to post super publicly. The COVID stuff was very public. Now, since Biden has destroyed this country, I'm much more public about Trump on my main page. But it was just a page for people who were very much like me, who were like kind of closeted conservative in some aspects, to come and like talk and just share different posts. And I save a lot of highlights on Tall Hot Politics. I'm like, okay, I need to have this highlight and this highlight. I have 2 full highlights dedicated to vaccine injuries, actually.
Wow.
Yeah. So I have like just so much random stuff. I call it like my rage page. All of the like rage comes out. This is where I post all my turf stuff. Yeah. And I do post a lot of that on my main page as well, but a lot of that on Tall Hot Politics. So, the intention was just for fun. And for me, it wasn't to be some political commentator and be famous or anything. It was just mostly like a place where I can really let it all out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, I want to give everybody an opportunity to find you on social media if they care to kind of, maybe they can reach out and see what resources you can share. You said you started your own doula certification. So I think that would be a great avenue for a lot of these, potential natural birth workers in the state of Texas.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I teach my doula training course twice a year, in January and in June, but next year I'm only going to do it in January.
Yeah.
Because I'm having my 3rd in May. I might do a late fall one, but I don't know. And again, that's very like woman centered, and it's a year-long course. So we do 6 intensive like education classes every 2 weeks. And then we have calls throughout the remainder of the year. And I'm like your mentor. I was like, what was Lindsay like for me? Every time I'd go to a birth, I'd be texting her. So that's what I am for all the people who take my class. When they go to their births, I'm available. Like if they're like, what's going on? I teach birth education as well. So if you're pregnant, you're a mom, I teach that. That's live online as well. So anyone can take it. And, so you can find those on my website at emilystanwyck.com. And then you can just reach out to me on Instagram as well at Emily Stanwyck. And then Tall Hot Politics, you can follow. I pretty much let anyone join, but really it's like, if I know who you are, that's when I don't let you follow. My friends and family who are, my like liberal friends who are in California still, I'm like, oh, they want to see what's going on? Nope.
Yeah. Try it with somebody else. I'm not the one.
Exactly.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for your time. It was really great to kind of deep dive and get to know you a little bit better. I love having you now on the conservative train, but keep doing what you're doing. I really appreciate your advocacy and your support for women in pregnancy and birth, and hope to catch up with you again soon.
Thank you so much. This was awesome to be here.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Shot Callers podcast. Please, if you found value in this content, rate us and share the podcast with a friend. It's a great way to get the message out and to empower everyone to make informed decisions. Until next time, never forget, we are the Shot Callers.